Okay, so welcome to a Hearts of Iron 4 Old World Blues tech guide. I think that's what I'm going to be calling this. So, we're going to be going through the whole goddamn tech tree in Old World Blues because they really did just put it out an update, and maybe some new people have joined us and wish to know what the hell is going on here. Okay, first of all, you need to understand that there are more civilized nations and less civilized nations. So more tech people and less tech people. If you have any notion of Fallout, you will understand the following. The Brotherhood of Steel have the highest level of tech in basically the whole game. The New California Republic is somewhat in the middle. And then you're going to have people like the White Legs or Caesar's Legion, which are basically backwards primitives that can't actually build anything. This is represented by your tech levels. Now, you can technically change these tech levels in your focus tree sometimes, depending on the nation, depending upon the focus, okay? So these aren't like permanent markers, but these are pretty permanent. Okay, you may be able to like move up your infantry one to sophisticated instead of at intermediate, but you're never. I don't think I've ever seen a tech nation go from basic to sophisticated. It's not going to happen. There's a little thing you can tweak in the settings for that, but generally speaking, that's not how it works. So if you're in the green, that means you can research these green technologies, which are going to be intermediate. If you have blue here, it means you can research the sophisticated line, okay? And if you're a backwards tribal, well, you could only research the basics, okay? But that's generally how this works. It's very hard to move any of these in one direction or another, and that's just how the game is set up. You're not going to go from a backwards tribal to the Brotherhood of Steel in, 10 years? Not happening. All right, so without further ado, let us go through each of these tabs and let me explain to you what is actually good and what is terrible in these tabs, okay? Riot control and infantry training. Okay, if you only have a few tech slots, which you do, most nations have 3, but you can sometimes end with 4. 4 are not terrible. They are somewhere in the middle, but hey, if you get 5, well, good luck to you. I mean, 4 is really good, 3 is meh, and 5 is like god tier. All right, warrior training. So what does this whole line do? Basically, this improves your frontline divisions with a whole bunch of stats, and it's decent if you have absolutely nothing else to research, okay? It's not like going to change your game in any way, but they're also pretty okay buffs, so that's something you can work on. Now, here is crowd control gear. Now, this is something that new players need to understand. This is probably one of the first things you want to research if you're going to be expanding your nation at all. Okay, because basically resistance in this game is horrifically bad on you if you do not have armor, basically, at all. So if you're assuming you don't want to use fucking power armor to suppress people, crowd control gear is going to be the best because of the armor it gives you and its hardness, and it obviously goes up for riot control gear. Now, the reason you research this early is because you will be taking over territories. For example, Washington Brotherhood will take out these 2 tribes here. Once these 2 tribes are dead, I don't even think these tribes have focus trees. No, they're generic. Once they are dead, you will have to occupy their land and then get their compliance, which will be set up there, up to 90%, and then you can quote-unquote core them here for a lot of political power. Most of the time, you're not going to be actually able to core things unless it comes from your focus tree or you have a shit ton of political power lying around, which you probably won't. Hence why crowd control gear is probably one of the most beneficial things you will research early on and build a shit ton of it. You will unlock enforcers, which again, you put them into a division down here, you edit it, you put all the enforcers here, you save it, you maybe add some little dogs, which we'll talk about later, you boost the suppression, you give them the gear, you set them as the the primary garrison template there, and then you can select which. Basically, the higher you go up here, the more pacification of it will be, but it also costs you a lot more equipment, and people are going to die, and resources, and all of that fun stuff, okay? So that's what you have to look forward to. All intents and purposes, meaning crowd control gear is very useful for pretty much every goddamn nation on the planet, and you can get most, if not all, of the bonuses you need by just having intermediate tech, which most nations have as long as you're not a tribal one. Nobody really plays tribals except Caesar's Legion because no. Now, your infantry equipment, what you're actually going to be able to build. You have 2 lines you can go down. Usually it is ballistic and energy. Most of the time, the line has been decided for you. In this case, because I am playing the NCR, you can clearly see that the Brotherhood is giving me a massive penalty to energy weapons, while not much of a penalty at all to ballistics. If you actually compare stat for stat, you will see that there are some minor differences here in between each of these weapons, but basically energy weapons pierce more, ballistics are a little bit more defensive and have more soft attack, which is what you're going to be using a lot of, slightly higher reliability, and lower heart attack than the heart attack on energy weapons. So for intents and purposes, unless you're fighting the Enclave, which you probably won't be, and that means the Enclave has all of their shit in order, you probably don't need energy weapons. As a standard rule, you probably don't need them, okay? Just unless you're fighting a fuck ton of people in power armor, you probably don't need energy weapons. But usually your line is decided for you ahead of time, depending upon what faction or whatever you start with. And most of the time, it is usually a good idea to go down the ballistic one. If you have energy lying around, and if you can take energy weapons, go right ahead. Now, there's melee weapons. Now, this is basically when you have infantry unlocked with either pipe guns or melee weapons, basically every infantry unit either gets one or the other. There is a specific way in which you can go into your templates, do equipment, and then get rid of like basic weaponry and then save it, so they'll only use actual firearms. But I mean, that's stretching if you're even gonna do that. But basically, what melee weapons do compared to like, they're a kind of an intermediary in between like the 9mm pistol and the lasers, because if you compare a regular laser rifle to a melee weapon, you will see the melee weapon actually costs, at least the heavy version, costs more, does less piercing, has actually pretty good reliability, less heart attack, somewhat more breakthrough, really good soft attack, and then decent defense, okay? Now, you can technically make any one of these, but just know that it's kind of iffy on whether you want to fully go down melee weapons, mostly because you end at power weaponry, and it's okay compared to, let's say, like an energy weapon or a service rifle, but at that point, you're going to need to be outfitting a mass amount of people, and it is the most expensive option here. So if you compare it to like a service rifle, yes, it is not terrible when compared to a service rifle. But remember, you are paying 3 more production cost for slight benefit gains, okay? Like maybe 2 more soft attack, which is, it is a lot, but for 3, I don't know. And then you have energy weapons here, which kind of do what the power weapons do by having the increased soft attack, increased heart attack, piercing, but their soft attack's lower. So you can look at these stats and make the determination yourself. But just remember that this ends at intermediate tech. You can basically choose one of these 3 options to use. Personally, the service rifle is what I go with. If I'm an energy and a nation that has energy weapons and I'm going to use them more into sophisticated tech, I'll take them. And if you are a tribal and backwards nation, well, you can't even get intermediate stuff usually. And if you could get power weaponry for like powered fists, that'd be a good option to go down for the increased soft attack. Basically, think soft attack at killing, light armored stuff, a general purpose weapon. I'm fighting the Brotherhood or Enclave, and I need energy weapons. That's how these lines go down. And then it gets worse. And then if you ever go to the sophisticated, you dump power weaponry because the plasma energy and the marksman carbine are just straight superior. Okay. Now, moving on to Special Forces equipment and power armor, and then these little horses, which are kind of funny things because there are no horses left. I believe if you go out east, some nations have the ability to get these horses and make them better, and yeah, you use them. But generally speaking, each nation is going to have to choose Do you want special forces equipment or do you want power armor? Generally speaking, what is going to happen here is that power armor over the long, and I mean real long game, is straight better than regular special forces equipment. Okay, what do I mean by that? Is if you compare the veteran ranger combat armor to the T-51B hardened power armor, you will see that the power armor basically kicks this one's ass. It's not even a contest. Now, the thing about this is, a lot of nations, depending upon their situation, one, straight can't just research power armor or even get up to this tier, and two, nations that, for example, the NCR have a lot of buffs to the Rangers. So do the Rogue Rangers out here, have a lot of buffs to light, and this is what they are called. They are going to be Special Forces platoons, but in reality that means they are quote-unquote light Special Forces, is what they are classified as. If you check one of your little commanders, you will see that is heavy special forces, and then for pain train and the snipers, light special forces. Basically, I think heavy special forces are power armor, light special forces are rangers with gear like this, like special forces equipment gear, like Pioneer Patrol Ranger armor and all that stuff. So you will be asking, why don't you just go power armor? Well, here's the thing with power armor. It doesn't really get good. Like, the Sierra Scorched power armor for the NCR is probably one of the better options you can get, and this is what would be referred to as Raider power armor for everyone else. If you compare Raider, quote-unquote, power armor to Ranger combat armor, you will see that, yes, the Raider power armor costs a little bit more. It has the same reliability, gives no piercing value, has more armor value. You actually move faster in Ranger combat armor, surprisingly enough. Your hard attack is better on the Ranger. You have less hardness, which is to be expected. You have more soft attack, more breakthrough, and same defense. But with the Ranger combat armor, you're receiving various buffs already. Just in between, because each one of these is just a different upgrade. You would get ballistic fibers, and then you would get armor hardening, which gives you 20% more armor, and then the ballistic fibers gives you a shit ton of HP for your special forces platoons and hardness overall. Now, you can make the same argument for the power armor, which, yes, makes sense for them getting the power armor frame hardening and the support frame, but generally speaking, there's more benefit for the Ranger if you go it early. Because, again, the end product is going to take you 7 years in-game, and if you want T-45D power armor, you're going to be paying a research penalty of at least a year before you can finish the veteran ones off, okay? And then, obviously, you have stealth boys and sophisticated tech and all of that other stuff. So, what does this all mean in general? If you are a random schmuck nation that doesn't have the ability to start producing power armor from the beginning, you probably don't need to make power armor. The Rangers and your special forces will do just fine, because again, if you have the buffs, they'll be decent. I'm thinking of Heaven's Gate out here, because technically what they can do, because they have access to, I mean, they can go various routes, but you can get them the steam-powered power armor, or you can go Dreadnought. So they can either go tanks, or they can go power armor. In their specific case, for Heaven's Gate, they don't actually have any buffs for regular light special forces. In that specific scenario, you would want to go for power armor. But if you were like the NCR and have a shit ton of buffs for Rangers, like Ranger Can Openers, Ranger Seth, Rangers Lead the Way, and all that stuff, you would want to stick with light special forces, at least for the moment, right? NCR is a little different, but Rogue Rangers gets buffs for this line. So, if you're poor, and if you want special forces but want to invest in something else, this is also a good line to go down, because if you want to actually build tanks and all of that shit out here, this line costs you way less than power armor would. Power armor means that you are not going to be investing in basically all this shit unless you're like an actual superpower. Alright, hope that made a distinction there. But overall, power armor is better, but depending upon the nation, depends if you're going to be using power armor or not. If you want to use something else, if you want special forces and use tanks and other shit, go for the special forces equipment, so Ranger armor. And if you want nothing but to use power armor, then just make power armor, alright? or use an army full of power armored sealed soldiers. There you go. Okay, and that finishes off that tech. And we will now talk about the basic support equipment here, okay? I'm going to go through each one of these lines relatively quickly, so just follow along. You need support equipment. It's a basic tech. You should have it, even if you are a backwards tribal nation. Now, this goes all the way to sophisticated and unique. If you have any of the uniques, you obviously build the uniques, because they're way better. But, generally speaking, the support equipment side of this is... Generally speaking, you want the saw. You want the saw because most of this is going to be a support company that does a shit ton of soft attack damage. Now, once you have it, you can also get this AA thing we'll talk about later. But you have the first line split is the LMG or the HCR, okay? The HCR does a shit ton more hard attack but less out attack. The light machine gun obviously does light machine gun damage. I don't remember a goddamn time that I've actually gone down the Gatling laser and the Tesla cannon because I haven't needed to fight Enclave power armored units in such mass that I would die if I didn't pierce their armor. It hasn't happened. Generally speaking, what is more likely to happen is you are to be overwhelmed by Caesar's Legion of hundreds and hundreds of tribals, and because of how much soft attack they have, it doesn't really matter. You'll be deorged and then killed. The light machine gun, generally speaking, is the preferred method, especially if you keep going down the line and it starts to get very good. Again, you want to go for more soft attack to deal with the rabble, which is most nations, especially if you're playing Brotherhood or even NCR. The high caliber ammunition has a place, but I really never take it because the soft attack damage is just way too good. You get HMG after that, and then you get lightweight material, and then you get minigun, okay? At minigun level, you're just absolutely destroying people. Get the 7 barrels upgrades to the 3 barrels, and baba-da-boopy, you're going great. The H-car is technically useful if you're fighting a whole goddamn nation of power armor guys, and you're like the NCR, which, great. If not, it's kind of useless. Just being straight honest with you. The AA rockets are only useful if somehow the AI or another player is using a shit ton of aircraft, which, fun fact, they don't actually use. The only time I've ever seen this be useful, NCR, if you play the NCR and Caesar's Legion is coming over the river, they don't actually have planes. They have a shit ton of gliders. And they have a shit ton of recon gliders and things that also blow up. Specifically, these bomb gliders that do a shit ton of ground attack damage to you. If that is the case, then yes, the AA rocket could be useful. In every other scenario, I have literally never not been in control of air superiority because nobody built planes. So, there you go. That's what that's for. The anti-tank rifles are very simple. If you are the NCR or you are a nation that's going to be fighting power armor dudes, this is the actual weapon you get. You don't change your fire team weapons, so you go the LMG, and if you really need to pierce shit, you get this line and you blow through people's armor and kill them. If you're fighting power armor guys or people that have tanks or whatever, go down this line, it'll solve your problem. Next is demolition. You have the ability to go flamethrower, or you have the ability to go fragmentation after you get dynamite. If you compare these two one for one, you are going to see that the flamethrower is the one that's going to do more soft attack, and then the fragmentations do obviously more hard attack. They have less breakthrough, lower reliability, and they all cost the same, but they give you more defense. Quite honestly, it's going to be up to you on what you want to do, but hey, the flamer actually makes a bit of sense. You can go the incinerator and then the grenade rifle, again, depending upon, do you want more soft attack up top or do you want more hard attack on the bottom? Quite honestly, it doesn't really matter. I'll just say that probably go the flamer, but you could make an argument for the grenade side of this, and it would be a perfectly valid argument. Next are your doggies, the dogs. These are your military police companies, okay? You will research this along with your crowd control gear. You will make a unit of enforcers, maybe 10 with. Technically, as big as... The bigger the unit, the more effective the dogs are with them adding to the suppression because they are a modifier, not a straight stats boost, okay? They're a modifier. So if you make an enforcement unit that's all of these slots filled out and then you add dogs, it'll be much more effective way to use the dogs. Dogs also have a support ability that isn't just pertaining to military suppression boost. Obviously, they give you more organization. They have organization, they have supply use, and the training time and the HP, but they actually have stats on top of that. So they can give you reconnaissance, which is very, very nice. If you have regular purebred mutts, they give you 1 unit of reconnaissance. Now, a regular recon unit gives you 1.5. So you may ask, hey, should I not just take the recon unit for reconnaissance? And you'd be like, yes, that actually makes sense. They have the movement boosts, and they give you a higher reconnaissance. However, dogs give you a movement boost of only half of what a recon company would, but they are an additional unit that can obviously boost stats and actually have their own stats of their own. So generally speaking, instead of building reconnaissance companies, which you can do, I prefer to go down the dog line because they're a dual purpose thing. They're used for suppression, and they're used for actually boosting your units because, again, some of your generals have the ability to take, if I remember correctly, it was Animal Friend. So he basically gives a shit ton of bonuses to the support companies of dogs and stuff. And then different techs, different whatever can boost them even higher. And again, remember that there are 2 different units here that are being boosted. It is a support companies, and then what else? There are technically Warhound platoons, which I don't think I've ever actually seen, but they do exist. So that's why I would recommend you go down the dog line. They're not really hard to train. You kind of just slap one or two factories on it, and you're good to go. Healing powder. You would be surprised how useful this is, okay? Most of the time in regular Hearts of Iron play, you don't build a fucking field hospital because it costs too much support equipment to equip everyone with. The only exception to that would be like Finland, where you're like, hey, I kind of actually need my men. In this specific game, Fallout, unless you're playing the fucking NCR or Legion, you are going to have manpower problems at some point. If you are playing a Brotherhood faction, you are going to have manpower problems immediately. Everyone else is kind of in between, but manpower is definitely a thing that you need to be worried about. Healing powder straight off of the bat for just a support company that you unlock with support equipment, it gives you an automatic minus 15% trickle back, which is very, 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 very handy. That means 50% of your casualties that you take in a war are not actually dead. They go back to your manpower pool. Again, this continues to increase. So this is at 20%, this is at 25%, this is at 30%, this is at 35%, and then this is at 40%. So just right off the bat, if you take if you don't spend any more research on it, this healing powder will pay for itself in dividend if you have the support equipment, which you will because it's really inexpensive to make. Every playthrough, make sure you get the chems and put them on your, at least, hopefully, your special forces units. At the beginning, if you don't have a lot of it. Otherwise, the inverse is true. If you have a shit ton of medical equipment, you will probably be putting a lot of them on your frontline units. So in this case, the NCR troopers get healing powder, and then my rangers would have boosts out the ass of other equipment that if I couldn't fit healing powder in, I would not put healing powder on like a ranger special forces unit, just so I can get them more fire teams, more flamers, more whatever. But if I could, and I actually filled out every slot I needed to, and then I had an extra slot open, slap healing powder on them, and you'd be fucking gaming. Next is Reconnaissance Company. We've kind of talked about them versus the dogs. They are a better unit for reconnaissance. That's their whole shtick. You want to have the initiative in combat? Congratulations, use a Reconnaissance Company. I've already said why I believe dogs are better, but if you really like your fucking initiative, use them. Logistics. Honestly, it depends where you're fighting, but it's useful, but not as useful as in base game. From what I have seen, because most of the infrastructure in the... sorry, not infrastructure. What the hell is it? There we go. Most of the infrastructure is already technically built on the map. And I don't believe you can even build any roads. No, you cannot. You can't even build any roads anyway. So basically, a lot of these territories are already maxed out on their quote-unquote supply. Like, these are level fucking 5 supply lines, okay? This makes it very different supply usage compared to pretty much every other mod in Hearts of Iron 4, because pretty much all the infrastructure is level 5, all right? So, unless you're fighting somewhere where you aren't sitting on a goddamn railroad track, which is possible. It is possible. Like, for these lines, these are not going to get very supplied very well. Logistics companies can be useful. But generally speaking, overall in Old World Blues, you kind of don't need this company. I know that's like a very weird opinion to have, but you really don't. In every other mod, and even base Hoi 4, because you don't have supply lines everywhere and things that are level 5 rail networks everywhere, yes, logistics companies are like a must in every goddamn unit, but this is not base game, and this is not even a mod of base game. It's its own thing. So you probably don't need logistics companies unless you're fighting somewhere without supply lines, which I don't even know where you'd maybe up in Canada. That would be a thing that you could possibly use up there, but oh well. Next is maintenance companies. They were kind of useful in base game, and it's the same here. What their thing is they increase the reliability of your unit, and they get you equipment captured. Now, this can actually be quite useful if you are fighting a shit ton of people. If you are fighting, like, for example, Legion as the NCR, you're probably going to be running out of equipment in the very beginning. If you are Legion, this is great, because what this means is you just get a whole bunch of equipment for free, which means you can make more uncivilized barbarian tribals, and then you can build them, and then you fight more people, and then you get more of their equipment, and you see how this kind of starts to roll down. So it can be useful, but don't think that you need to slap it onto like every unit, because they already have 85% reliability just on freaking power armor. And remember, you can't go above 100% reliability anyway, and stuff's still going to take attrition. So I really usually don't go down this maintenance line unless I'm doing something really funny or I absolutely need it, all right? Lastly, or next up is your vehicles. So you need to research bicycles pretty early in the game. Just one of your tech slots need to go to it, and I'll tell you why. When you start a scavenging program, after these 90 days are up, you will have the options to send out regular pioneers with nothing. They have a very low chance of actually acquiring anything. People with vehicles or people with power armor. Of those three, the cheapest option is vehicles, because, fun fact, the scrap bicycles that cost 2 production cost are technically scout quote-unquote vehicles that you can patrol the Mojave with, and they give you a very, very good chance at actually finding something. You can either do that or you can build power armor frames, which most people won't try to build a power armor frame because they're actually more expensive. So therefore, you build the bicycles. Now, if you want to go down this line, it can be powerful if you want to do vehicles. If you want to do power armor, literally don't bother with this line and you will be perfectly fine. But these lines above give you mobile reconnaissance and mobile paramedics, and mobile paramedics actually have a better trickle back than your your medical support companies. Now, do these medical support units? Yes, they do stack. Okay, so just so you understand here, paramedic teams are actually straight better support companies in overall usage compared to just medical chem support, because again, they can get casualties back faster. I think that's how that works. But if you wanted the most efficient way of getting saving your soldiers' lives, it would be to use mobile paramedic teams. But basically, think of all of these as just straight better support companies compared to the land-based ones. So, for example, this one gives a -10 supply usage, and then the mobile logistics company gives you a -10, which is basically the same, but they have other stats. They have initiative, which is the 10% versus 20%. As you can see, the initiative here is higher. So, generally speaking, all of these support companies are the better versions of the ones in the support tab, but you need the support tab ones to unlock these ones. So, for example, healing. You need healing powder to unlock mobile paramedic teams. So there we go. Now, what is the difference between all of these lines here? Very short and simple here. Do you want faster, less expensive vehicles? I guess the best way to describe it would probably be at tier 2. Yes. So, at tier 2, so you either go top line, which is the scavenge motorbikes and scavenge vehicles. This gets you the ability to produce them cheaper. They use less cells. They have a slightly higher reliability, apparently. They have the same piercing. They have less armor, but they go faster, and their hardness is less. Their breakthrough is, for some reason, more, and their defense is less. Do you want faster, mobile infantry? Or do you want harder hitting mobile infantry? That's basically the choice you're making with each one of these choices, because they're going to be your motorized infantry. You don't build both. You build one or the other. Please do not build both. That is stupid. Build one or the other, and then get your production up to mass scale. Your choice. If you want to overrun enemies and do flanking maneuvers, the military car is perfectly able to do this and will do it very well. If you want support that's going to help your tanks in a massive motor push, you're going to need to go down the second line, which will be like the Great Ward APCs and stuff, okay? Now, these tanks are good. They are not actually terrible. Now, when you first research it, you get a tank platoon. So, just to compare, let's see if we can actually do this. I don't know if I can. Okay, well, if I can, I can. They cost a shit ton of production and cost, but as you can see, they have 62 soft attack, 50 hard attack, 75 armor, 60 piercing, and a whole bunch of really, really good stats with 100% hardness, okay? So we'll just use the soft attack number. It's 62. On the power armor, it is 10. So if you want to fight power armor guys with tanks, you definitely can do that, and you will probably eradicate them because they're actual infantry versus, a goddamn tank. So, yes. If you, for example, are the NCR, as I gave in an earlier example, and you want to use Special Forces equipment but not too expensive, you go down the Ranger line. And then most other nations, like Brotherhood of Steel, will go down the Power Armor line. And you're like, well, how do I fight them? Well, as the NCR, because you technically didn't invest too much in this, in your Special Forces, you get to reap the rewards here in the Vehicle tab, and you get to have, Wasteland tanks. And Wasteland tanks versus Power Armor, it's not going to go very well for the guys with Power Armor. So that's how you fight them, and this also helps against Legion and stuff because of the big terrain, all right? So that's how that works. Next is robotics. Okay. Generally speaking here, the funny thing is I've never actually played a nation that I've had to use robots because I just don't operate that way. But generally speaking, every nation will benefit for researching scrap bots and then the automation, because automation gives you a 3% more production efficiency cap, okay? If you go down these lines down here, they each reduce your population factor by minus 15%, which is a massive penalty here, okay? That is an absolute massive penalty. You would do this if you are literally robots and you do not care. For example, I would be like, I think it's New Vegas, and who is the other one up here? There's Robo City, you could do it, but basically everywhere that can just make their own robots and they don't need people. But basically you have a few lines here that you could theoretically go down. You have the Protectrons, you have Gusty, and then you have the Heavy Lift Robot. Generally speaking, let's see, so between Gusty and the Police Protectrons, you are looking at a little more hard attack. They have less soft attack, they have less armor, they have more speed, more piercing, whatever. And then you have the heavy combat robots will probably go really slow, but have a shit ton of armor, yes. And are generally have more hardness, yes. All right. So, depending upon what you want from your robots, you can look at each one of these lines. But basically, if you go down to the heavy line, well, they're really good, but they move slow. If you go down the top line for some weird reason, they go slower than the Gusties, but the Gusties go fast. but they have better stats than the Gusties overall, and then these things go real slow, but have better stats than both of them. And you obviously have the Securitrons and whatever else for your unique tech. These CNC robots, you're going to use them for command and control. The higher up you have your command and control, the better options they are. And command and control robots are essential for robotic humans, providing them with a need to organization as well as boosting combat ability. Researching technologies and automated warfare will allow us to equip our divisions with 3 CNC attachments instead of just 1. So there you go. You kind of need them. I won't touch doctrines, not in this video. Yeah, that's all we'll say on that. Aircraft. Okay, so for your aircraft, gliders. Wow, research a glider. Fantastic. I'll go over this very simply. If you want CAS and you have the ability to be an intermediate nation, ideally, if you want to fight anybody that's like Legion or Brotherhood of Steel, you're going to want fighters and attackers. You're going to go up here and research motorized flight, lightweight materials, and then you can be able to research the monoplane if you have the light biplane unlocked. And then once you have the biplane unlocked, you can research the monoplane attacker if you have the triplane attacker. So basically, you need to research all of them. But generally speaking, fighters and bombers do what they do. Fighters kill everything that's in the sky, and then these ground attack aircraft have, well, obviously, ground attack and blow things up. What gets interesting here, which I have tried to do this, but I have never actually needed to, is these strat bombers. Yes, I don't know if you played in a multiplayer game, it could theoretically be useful as you bomb people from Alaska in a nuclear jet bomber with their strategic strat bombing, but they do cost a shit ton to build, but that is your prerogative. But they do not cost so much as an attack plane. They only cost about 10 more, but obviously the attack plane has 33 grand attack compared to 24. So if you want to meme, it is theoretically possible to bomb people with a strategic bomber, but generally speaking, these are just not worth it. They're just not worth the investment in what they do. And these things can't even do ground attack, yeah. So, yeah. Unless you're strategically bombing somebody for fun memes, the line is fucking useless. If you want to do that, fucking more power to you, but yeah. Alright, let me explain these little things here, these little icons here. You will see that some of them, they basically change how the plane operates. So, for the heavy monoplane, this is the generic version. It's good at everything, bad at nothing. You can then specialize these planes. You can go a heavy monoplane, a fleet defender, or a escort fighter. Now, if you have a fleet defender, for some ungod reason, you have a carrier, which I don't even know if it's even possible to fucking put planes on a carrier in this game, but sure. And then you have the mono escort planes, which obviously they're probably better escorts, but I don't know what fucking stat that would be. I think they're just the same. They have slightly less air attack. And they have more range. And then the heavy monoplane obviously is better at killing things in the air. And then the mono escort, I'm kind of curious. It's just a better... It has less speed than a regular monoplane. It has less agility, but has more range. So again, each one of these variants do something different compared to the standard model. Now, these will come up as an additional thing you can produce. It's not like you're locked out of like having each one of these planes. Like, it's not like if you take heavy monoplanes, all of your monoplane fighters become them. No, they just become a new production option for you to build. So you can technically build the monoplane and then the heavy whatever. In all honesty, you really don't fucking need to fuck with this. Gonna be honest, if you're unless you're playing like some massive multiplayer game in which you need to edge out every single possible advantage, then yeah, build whatever you want. Honestly, the basic ones are more than enough. The monoplane attacker, I would almost recommend you do go ground pounder here compared to the regular one, because the regular one has obviously more range, but the ground pounder has more ground attack. But honestly, that is up to you there. The ones that all do the naval bullshit, it's basically fucking worthless. We'll get to that in a minute, but the naval gameplay is fucking worthless in this mod. But that, again, it's all up to you on those. The last two things here is the transporters. Okay, so what these transporters allow you to do is basically fucking paradrop people. And they can also do air resupply, which, again, usually supplies are not a fucking problem in this mod, but the ability to paradrop people is very good. And obviously the Dreamlift, the C-130 Hercules, is very good. So if you want to paradrop people, you either need to go down the cargo planes, and remember, you can actually drop regular special forces. So your Ranger special forces here, you can actually paradrop them behind enemy lines. As fucking crazy as that sounds, you can do it. And that's what they're for. They're the cheap alternative to what we're about to talk about, which are your combat blimps, okay? Now, these combat blimps are fucking expensive. These are really expensive for what you are getting here, and their manpower cost is probably the highest out of everyone here. Yes, it is the highest. Which you'd be like, yeah, that's not really a problem until it is a problem. Because, again, I've ran a Montana chapter about a year ago, I would say, and the service power was not a problem at first, but the more of these you build, because the way air works, if you build a squadron of whatever, it's going to fill up to that number. So if it is 50, and I think in this mod it's 50 aircraft, that means 50 times 20. Let's do some let's get my handy dandy calculator out here. So if we do 20 times 50, that is 1,000 men. As the NCR in the beginning of the game, I start out with 20,000 people. You can see how this gets very expensive in manpower cost very quickly. It's not like you build one of these fucking things, you're going to build 50. Because the way the game is coded, that the modders have no choice here. It's going to be 50 for every single type of, basically, aircraft. They can't make it like one combat blimp or whatever. But generally speaking, these are your jack of all trades, master of none. These are great at doing most things. And if your enemy is an uncivilized barbarian, like the Caesar's Legion or the Whitelegs, and you have one of these airships, you can be like, I'm going to do air superiority, combat assault, logistic strikes, nuclear strikes, and everything. And it'd be all fucking glorious. Just remember that these are not going to be the best at anything. Let us compare their flying fortress to a jet bomber. So, let us see. The air defense is very good, obviously. I don't know, do they even have air attack? Their air attack is good. Their production cost is ginormous. Their speed is low. Their naval attack, their air superiority is actually pretty good. So, I'll stand corrected. These are, like, generally speaking, the best aircraft type that just exists in the game, but they're horrifically expensive to build in terms of production cost and manpower. But if you can build these flying fortresses that just sail all over the world and kill everything and can do every mission, that yes, they do work very well. You can also paradrop with these things, as stupid as that sounds, because they're technically a transport, so that means you can drop power armored assault soldiers onto the ground with super fortresses. So hey, that works. Up to you on which one you want, but generally speaking, it is quite fun to use these combat blimps, and obviously you can specialize them further depending upon the variants. I haven't really talked about the uniques here, but generally speaking, it is not unheard of for you as the NCR, once you have done the scavenge program once, to get vertibird schematics. I have done it, and holy shit, vertibirds are really good. Vertibird gunships, also really good. I've never gotten, obviously, the Zans, because you need to be Shan to do that, but if you can get vertibird schematics, build fucking vertibirds. It's not even a question for your transporters. Even your Dreamlifters have less range than your V2B vertibirds. Okay. Naval. We'll fucking do this thing real quickly. We'll talk about the modules. All these modules in here increase stats on Navy. They do very incrementally, and they take a fucking research slot to research all of this shit. Navy is the exact same way. Here is the problem with the Navy. We are not fighting over oceans. We are not fighting over fucking really anything. We are fighting in rivers, lagoons, and maybe the American coastline. And most of the time, in most of these countries up here, where it is not a fucking factor to be building things on these fucking rivers. You just don't need to build the damn things because usually there are little straits that you can just cross anyway. And what do I mean by that is these little red lines. It means you can just attack over them anyway. So they're terrible. I mean, there's no other way to say it, but naval combat in this game, in this mod, is specifically fucking terrible. You can spend all of your research points on all of these shitty little boats, and what it will get you is basically practically nothing. Unless you were like New Victoria, and they actually had to land invade you, which they don't, because they can just well, yes, they actually do. They actually have to land fucking somewhere on your island. If you had a massive navy that's sitting in the Canadian coastline with all of your shit, yes, you cannot actually be killed unless they, like, paradrop you, which can also happen. But most of the time you're connected to somebody, and then you can kill them with land forces or air forces, and that's a wrap. So these whole lines are, honest to God, not worth investing in. And trust me, I've tried. I've tried to make fucking torpedo boats with shit tons of twin mounts and chrome mounts and composite ridges against Kaiser's Legion as the NCR on this specific river, and what happens every single time is the Legion just builds glider bombers and then kills all of your navy, and then their starting navy will just come out and kill you, and that's it. So yeah, there you go. If you want a fucking navy, go ahead, but honestly, it's fucking useless. Last thing we'll hear before we talk about, I guess, reward technologies for a second before we wrap this video up, is industry. So we'll talk about each one of these lines. The more advanced you are, obviously, the more shit you can get. So, tool procurement, industry planning, and construction basics are usually the first things that you take on this line to start getting things going. The line up here for scavenge tools, tracking dogs, and quadrant searching, these are straight better than these two upgrades here, with improvised tools and basic tools. But they fall off severely when you get to intermediate tech and sophisticated. What this allows you to do, and the only time I've ever seen it even be a viable option, would be as if you're Kaiser's Legion or some backwards tribe that isn't Kaiser's Legion that is pretending to be Kaiser's Legion. But Kaiser's Legion benefits right here from getting these because they are technically a basic nation. Just to make sure that I'm not talking out of my ass. Because they start out as a basic nation with only Industry Tech 1, meaning that they cannot actually get standardized tools, they benefit very much from these three techs up here. So that's what this is for. This is like, hey, this is Kaiser's Legion or I'm a fucking barbaric tribesman. The rest of the tool production obviously just increases your efficiency cap and your whole bunch of shit, and you research that immediately. Generalized production versus specialized production. Okay, so what is really going to be happening here is there's some decisions that come up, but we'll talk about those fucking later. Or not at all, actually, because they really don't matter. Dedicated workshops versus local workshops. So if you go down to the bottom line with dedicated workshops, what you're going to be losing is production efficiency retention, but you get more factors in your you get less factors in your state, which doesn't really matter. You have more factory output and more dockyard output by 1. But the work as needed and work local workspaces gets you this fancy thing called recruitable population factor plus 2%. Recruitable population factor is going to be very useful because even as you see with Kaiser's Legion, you only have 80%. And if you can boost it up by 2%, and then another 2%, and another 2%, and another 2%, and another 2%, you'll be at fucking 10%, probably. But that's how you use, or why I usually go the top line is just for more manpower. Because again, manpower in this mod is very hard to come by. But if you don't have a manpower problem, which I can't imagine you won't, dedicated workspace is good. If you want to just pump out the absolute sheer amount of shit and that's it, and have no bonuses to anything else, yes, bottom line, good. Generally speaking, everyone else is going the top line, including myself, because the recruitable population, you only lose around 3% per tech, so 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So 21% more factory output down here than up here, but you get like what, 15, 16% more recruitable population, and you can actually build another factory in your state. I think by the end of this, you can build another factory compared to the bottom line. So that's what that's about. Next, the construction line just gets you faster construction speed, which is very useful. The top line up here is going to get you construction speed for a whole bunch of bullshit, which really doesn't matter. The one stat here that does matter is the resource efficiency gain. The higher this is, the more shit that you pull out of the ground will actually be available, if that makes sense. It's a very weird fucking how the system works. It doesn't show you here on the screen, but generally speaking, imagine 56 and then modified by plus 12. So whatever that fucking number is, or times plus 12 will get you like a few, like fucking like 60 or 62 or something like that. More water, right? So then that'll be the total water will be like 62 with a 12% extraction rate. So if you're running out of resources, you go this top line, and that's what you use it for. The bottom one is for fucking factory conversion, cell capacity, and population nomadacy, which isn't really explained in this mod, which sure means fucking something, probably. Energy capacity can be useful if you're using a shit ton of vehicles or whatever, but honestly, it's never been a problem. Legitimately, I've never fucking researched this line, and I've not had a problem beating whatever goal I set, so great. You have nothing else to research, go down that line. One of the most important things in the whole fucking tech tree that you will research is this organizing agriculture, because the first tech gets you just straight 250 people. The next one gets you 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and 5. And those manpower are free. And of course, you're getting the appealed refugees, which again, that doesn't really matter, but the monthly population kind of does matter because, again, depending upon how long you play, the monthly population keeps going up by 25 and 30% really does actually mean something in the long run. If you're playing the game for like 10, maybe 20 years, it'll actually mean something. But generally speaking, just because of the amount of people you get, these just straight people, it's a very good tech to beat in the beginning. Recycling gets you free repair, and then production efficiency retention, and then equipment conversion speed and all that other fun shit. Honestly, doesn't really fucking matter. If you're converting equipment, yes, it can matter, but past that, no. Maybe the energy cell. It's not a hard tech to research, doesn't take that much. If you want it, great. If not, don't get it. And then all of these buildings, after you get the resource production, which I usually get almost every game for the resource efficiency gain, past that point, I don't fucking research these things. I've literally never had a goddamn problem. Ever. Literally ever. If you have a problem with resources, just go eat somebody with resources. I mean, that's literally the whole game. If you have a resource problem, you can just check your map and be like, oh, yes, I need that. Let me go kill them. Done. Immediately done. If at some point you can't actually get a resource that you really need, well, these foundries, purification, and power stations will let you get more power, scrap metal, and then the fabrication factory, I think, is... The fabrication laboratory is here. Might be the only one you actually need to research, but again, it's so fucking far up the line, it really doesn't matter. But that's, honest to God, the truth is you kind of don't need these at all. You will have so many decisions for power. For example, the NCR has, let's see. Tag NCR, you will see that they have a shit ton of things for power that they can pop. Like all these fucking things for 50 power in the greater area, 50 more power here. Generally speaking, I've never had to build these. I think one time I had to actually build a fucking pump somewhere to get water, but that's honestly it. If you need them, you need them. If you don't, you probably don't fucking need them at all. And then these last things, these are not researchable, but if you can get them, great, because fucking amazing. But yeah, I don't think I've ever fucking got these, or I've never played a faction that actually has it. Besides, I think Volts get them. Last thing here, engineering tech. Okay, being very fucking honest with you, the bottom one is good for research speed. That is what it is. It is your research speed line. You get radars, which do something, probably, and then more research speed, and then appealed refugees and all that shit, okay? That line, good. You need more research speed, makes sense. Okay, bottom line. Bottom line gets you radar. What does radar do? Technically lets you see shit, gets you more intel, all of that fun shit that it does in the base game, and since nobody has it, it's useful, but you're not fighting people with a lot of fucking aircraft because it's Fallout, so just know it's kind of useful, kind of not. I wouldn't fucking be like, oh, let me go build a level 6 radar station in Lost Hills. Oh my god, I need it. It's not that. It's kind of be like, oh, that's funny. I can see them coming towards me as I die. If the combat languages are actually useful because they increase your reinforce rate, which is how fast you come in battle. I know, it was what she said. But how fast your reinforcement divisions come in, or companies, or whatever they're called, come into battle, and the chance they come in. So, and the coordination obviously helps for dealing damage to divisions. And that's what all this line is. And then you have your encryption and decryption. Okay? This is kind of a fucking leftover from if you don't have law resistance, which is what this is, the whole Intel agency shit. But generally speaking, it increases how hard you are. If you have the encryption, I believe it's how hard you are to have your shit stolen, and the decryption is the exact opposite. This used to be a really big thing before we had law resistance, but after law resistance, I don't even think you can fucking increase it, but whatever. Because you have cryptology and you have all that other shit that does that for you in law resistance. All right, that should finish this up. Last thing I'll talk about are the reward techs. You get these for various things that you get out here, okay? Like Seth's Rangers, I think, in here. There's Gauss weapon schematics, there's vertebrate schematics, and all these things you can find in the Wasteland if you scavenge the Wasteland, obviously. And we've already talked about how you use bicycles to scavenge the Wasteland, and babada-boopy, you're good to go. Past that, this is where you find if something gives you a buff and you are unsure. For example, if you are going to do like Mimosa's army and then it's like, hey, adds Ranger's lead. What the hell does Ranger's lead actually do? You come in here, yeah, scroll through the whole thing. Let's see. Ranger's lead, there you go. It adds 50% reconnaissance to all special ops platoons. And that's where you find all of those buffs or whatever if you're curious. Tech levels we've gone over, and everything else we've done over. It only took us, holy shit, a goddamn hour. All right? Well, hopefully this is helpful to somebody. I will make a dedicated video to doctrines here. But that will be way shorter than an hour. So if this helped you understand what is going on in the tech side of this, great. Leave a like, subscribe for the additional video for the land doctrines. Otherwise, I will see you people later, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.